Welcome to Messy Liberation, the podcast that dives deep into feminism, business, and personal growth. I'm Becky Mollenkamp.
And I'm Taina Brown. Get ready for another messy conversation through the eyes of two intersectional feminist coaches.
Let's get messy. Hi.
Hi, Jinx.
Well, almost. I think I beat you just barely. How are you, first of all?
I've been better.
Hey,
Taking care of a sick dog all night.
Yeah, so. With a sick kid. I think, I wonder if there's just something in the air. I don't know.
Maybe
it's just
maybe.
There's probably somebody who knows the moon reason or the astrological reason. It's probably what's Mercury in retrograde, and I don't even know it.
Listen,
yeah,
I don't care what the reason is. I just want it to be over.
Me too. Today feels like, knock on wood, it has the potential for the turnaround to begin in my house, but we'll see. But anyway,
okay.
All right. So all that aside,
I was going to ask you what shade of lipstick that is, because it looks really good on you.
It's hilarious because I think it's intense. Like when I normally wear something, this is only for our YouTube folks, I suppose, but I usually, well, first of all, I normally don't wear any makeup, not a stitch of it. And if I want to put on any makeup, it's usually just lipstick. And I feel most comfortable in much lighter shades, but I get so many compliments on this that I end up wearing it for podcasts and stuff when I feel like, the truth is I haven't washed my hair in days. I haven't showered in days.
It looks good. Your hair looks good though.
In my pajamas, even though you can't tell. So I just was like, I need to comb my hair and put on some lipstick so I feel a little better. This is called Number 7 Matte Liquid Lips by the Boots Company out of England. And it's 7340 is the number. That's the best I got for you. But it's just a little, it goes on really easily and it lasts for quite a while. So anyway, yeah.
It's a good color.
I always feel like, whoa, I feel like I'm walking in the room. It feels like a peacocking thing, that peacocking where you wear something that makes people notice you. And I don't love being noticed. So it's a bit much. But anyway, it does its job for podcasting.
Yeah. It matches your art too.
Well, I mean, you got to stay on brand.
Yeah.
At all costs.
Yeah. No, it looks really good on you. It looks really good on you. So you were just telling me you haven't seen Sinners yet.
Yeah, I have not seen Sinners, which I know is a real travesty, but I am apparently one of the only folks. The reason I haven't is because I don't do horror movies, just the rule. I was saying I also haven't seen anything by Jordan Peele. I can't tell you the last time I saw a scary movie. Might have been Blair Witch Project, and even that I think I saw later as a rental. I can't stand the idea of being in a dark theater where I don't know who's behind me or what's it's giving me creepy crawlies, even just thinking about it and watching and no, even if the only way I have to be in the back row. And even then I still wouldn't believe that there's not someone lurking. I don't do scary. I have massive anxiety. And so I don't like to push anxiety with it. But I will say the reason that we're talking about is because I sent you something that said Sinners is the highest grossing original movie in America. Original meaning not a sequel, because there's so many of those in America this decade, and it's not even close. And I think it said it made what is it, $500 million or something? I don't know. I'll try to find the number, but you saw it, right?
I did see it. Yeah, we saw it maybe a couple weeks after it came out. I don't like scary movies either. And I would consider this one more suspense than scary, although there are a few jump scares. I do watch Jordan Peele's movies just because his storytelling is really good. So even though the movies are a little bit on the horror side of things, the storytelling is really good, and I do appreciate good storytelling. What I like to do, I don't know if this helps you or if you've tried this, but when it is a movie that I know is going to induce anxiety, because that's the same reason why I don't like scary movies. I don't like not knowing when the jump scares are going to happen, or I will read up on it. I'll just read the plot. I'll just give myself all the spoilers. So I know what to expect. I didn't do that with Sinners though. But it was really good.
I've heard. So just back to Jordan Peele quickly, because I remember seeing the preview. I don't know if I was in a theater or just watching it on TV, more likely on TV, because since we've had a kid, I rarely go to the movies anymore. But the preview for the movie Nope, my husband and I were watching it, and I was I could tell it was scary. I knew it was Jordan Peele, and I knew about the other movie. What was the one before that? The big one.
The first one, Get Out?
Yeah, the first one. His first big one.
Yeah, Get Out.
Get Out. That's right. And
Yeah,
I hadn't
yeah.
seen it, but I knew the premise of it enough because it was such a huge thing that I'd heard about it. But I knew it was scary. And so I saw this preview and it was looking scary. I knew it was Jordan Peele, so I was like, okay, it's scary. And as I watched it, I said to my husband, I was like, nope, 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 nope. And then the name of the movie was Nope. And I was like, well, now that's kind of perfect, but no, I won't see it. I don't care if I know exactly what's going to happen. I don't ride roller coasters, even if I know
Yeah,
exactly what's going to happen. Like,
yeah,
I am a person, I don't really like to take an airplane, even though that's like, I just like to have my feet securely on the ground. I don't need to be scared in order to feel like life is exciting. Like, life is
yeah,
exciting enough for me. I
yeah,
like
yeah,
life enough that I don't need to like do these. I don't need
yeah,
adrenaline. Adrenaline is
yeah,
not a drug I seek. I seek dopamine lots of
yeah.
times in other ways. Like, I'm like, okay, give me like that dopamine hit of, a new like on social media or buying a new, pair of shoes or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
I like that kind of a chemical reaction.
Hmm.
Adrenaline, I can pretty much live without.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. I remember being in high school and my friends all wanted to see like the Scream movies and the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies, and I had no choice but to sit in the theater and watch that. But I would never make that choice for myself.
So tell me about Sinners then and why it's so good. Because I've been hearing it's really great. I have a feeling it's kind of allegorical or metaphorical or something is the impression
Yeah.
I'm getting, that it's obviously deeper than just a like horror movie
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is.
without giving too much away. No spoilers.
Yeah. No spoilers. First of all, Michael B. Jordan playing two characters.
Twins, right?
Yeah, twins. I didn't know that going into it. I knew he
Well, I
was in
did
the
know it was about
movie.
twins, so I assumed they didn't hire real twins, although I guess I shouldn't have
Yeah.
assumed that. But
Yeah. I didn't know that it was about twins. I just knew he was in the movie. And so I was just like, oh shit, wow, okay. So he's playing two characters, which I mean, twins are, if you've ever been around twins or you know twins, they're similar, but they're also different. And
very
so,
different.
yeah, so that was just, I mean, he's just a phenomenal actor. The way the story is told is really good because it's told through like a flashback. It's really interesting. And so you kind of start at the end and then go back to the beginning and, go forward. And it is definitely an allegory. It felt very, I remember in grad school when I was getting my master's in humanities and I took a cultural studies class on, and we've talked about this, the history of American music and how it really, like, Black culture really created American music.
Yes.
And so that's a really big theme throughout the film. This culture of Blackness in the American South that creates this really unique type of music. So there's a lot of, the entire movie feels like a blues song, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really, really appreciated that. There's a lot of world building in the first 2/3 of the movie. So it feels really slow. And I think we caught like a 8 o'clock show in
Yeah,
the
that's
middle
late.
of the week.
I could do that.
So I was just, it's not a boring movie, but I was so tired. I was just like, oh,
Can
I
we get
need
to it?
the action to start. Yeah. And then it's like the last third of the movie where the action like starts to pick up
How
and take
long
off.
is it?
It's a little over 2 hours.
Okay, that's not too bad. I'm
Yeah.
really tired of these like 3 hour, like who's got this kind of time? I want to go
Yeah.
back to the 80s when everything was like 90
It's like
minutes. That
90
was
minutes.
perfect.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that shows my age and my attention
Yeah.
span.
So I think watching it at home might be, if you can get through watching it once it's like released on streaming and you can watch it at
Yeah,
home.
because at home I can have all the lights on. I can
Hmm.
sit with my back against the wall. I'm in my
Yeah.
familiar environment. Like, yeah, and I can push pause anytime or fast forward,
Yeah.
which is often
Yeah.
what I do with horror movies. Like, if I've ever watched anything, not even horror movies because I don't watch horror, but if I watch anything that's like a little intense for me, I'll usually just kind of like skip through on the Netflix like 10 seconds thing where I can still kind of tell what's happening. Or I push mute because I find that the music is so much a part of what raises the anxiety. And when you turn the
Mm.
music off, so
Yeah.
much of that
Yeah.
is relieved because they do that music intentionally to make you feel that way, which is cool that
Yeah.
music can do that. But like, well, I just wanted to
Yeah.
quickly mention because I also sent to you this opinion piece from the Mississippi Free Press, which if people don't read it or follow them on social media, I highly recommend. They're an independent, free meaning independent news outlet, and they are really good. Their reporting's really good. And in a time like this, we need more of this kind of reporting. But in addition to doing politics and stuff, they talked about Sinners, and it's a review of it, what they said, which is Sinners was a masterfully executed horror movie that features historically accurate depictions of ways Black people survived Jim Crow. This was probably the most clever way to disguise a history lesson I have ever witnessed. What I love most about the movie was its contextualized imagery of Black people. And they go on to say, like, I liked the color purple and movies like that, but the problem was that a lot of these historically celebrated Black movies are talking about the pathology found in Black culture without context. So they can allow the viewer to then see the Black pathology while omitting the contaminated petri dish, the disease of dysfunction it was grown in. And so I thought that was really good. Like, basically, it sounds like this is something that's trying to show a more robust and full picture of how the way Black folks are showing up in this movie, like the context, the systems that help to create that, which is really important. So that does make me feel like if I can, get over my fear, maybe I need to see it.
Yeah. There's definitely different types of Blackness. Like you have the sharecroppers, you have like the preacher and his family, you have the twins who are from there, and this isn't giving much away in the movie, so it's not that much of a spoiler, but who end up enlisting in the military, fighting in one of the wars. You have the mixed, Black characters who are mixed Black and white because of, the legacy of slavery in the South. You also have an Asian family, a Chinese family in Mississippi, which I thought was really clever to put in there because there was a Chinese Immigration Act that was passed shortly before this time period that the movie takes place in, where they immigrated all these Chinese folks over to work on the railroads. And so there was like this influx of Chinese immigrants in the South, in the US South, who once the railroad was done, they were just there. And so they had kind of assimilated into Southern culture. And there was one scene in particular that I absolutely loved, and it was in the beginning of the movie because the world building in the beginning, actually the whole thing also felt like watching a stage play. If you've ever watched a play in theater, the way that it's like a slow build and then everything just kind of happens at the end and then it like wraps up, but also the way that stage plays use movement to dictate where you're supposed to pay attention to or what you're supposed to be paying attention to, right? And so there's one scene in the movie in the beginning where it feels like it's just like one camera take, and it's like, I would say at least like a 10-minute long scene, and it's just like one camera take. It feels like, anyway, I didn't notice any cuts in the editing, but the camera is just like moving from one character to another, and it's moving like from their perspective, from one character's perspective to another through movement. And like it goes from one of the twins going into the store, one of the stores owned by the Chinese family, to the father of the Chinese family, to the daughter of the Chinese family, to then the daughter walking across the street to the other store that they own. And then all of a sudden it's the mom's perspective. And then she comes back to the original store, and then it goes back to the father and then back to the twin. And so it's just like this weaving of perspectives and just like this short time frame with this just like impeccable camera work. I was almost a film major in college, so like I like film technicalities and things like that, like I really appreciate. And so that was my favorite scene in the entire movie, just because it was just beautifully done. It was just so beautifully done.
I was just looking at, and it's apparently starting yesterday. You can start watching at home. I know we're talking about this late because it came out like a month ago. But it's just now hitting home. So if you're listening to this and like, oh, they're talking about something old, but like just so you know, you can start watching it now on Prime Video. I think you still have to like rent it, but you can rent it at home. So I could, and it's gonna finish its theatrical run, I think sometime towards the end of this month.
Okay.
And it's made $350 million globally. So it's like done incredibly well. And I think part of, before we move on from this, and I'm not sure where you wanted to go next, and maybe it'll be the same thing, but I want to make sure that we talk about Ryan Coogler's deal for this movie, because that's such a big part of the conversation as well. And I don't know if you know about his deal. Did you hear that chatter?
Mm-mm.
So he negotiated a deal that it's really interesting. I don't know enough about the movie industry to be certain who to believe, but I tend to believe Ryan Coogler in the story
Yeah.
versus the studio executives, because he negotiated a deal where he retains copyright for the movie after I think it's 10 years. So it will revert to him, which is unheard of. At least
Hmm.
that's what the studio executives tried to say. People are saying like that doesn't happen. And part of me thinks they're just trying to make sure other directors and writers don't try to
Don't do the
negotiate
same
the same
thing.
deal,
Yeah.
because he's like, he had such belief in this project. It meant so much to him. He said it was deeply personal and he really had a lot of belief in it. And he was like, I don't want to give this away, right? Like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
giving this away forever. I want to own this because it's mine. And it feels like almost like a part of his family, right? And so he has this deal where in 10 years, the copyright returns to him, which is massive because anything that comes out of that property, he'll get everything, right?
Wow.
And that is like amazing. And considering it's made $350 million, I'm
Yeah.
sure he also got points and, things like that are making him a ton of money off of it. But that is something that's huge, especially for a Black director, Black writer. That doesn't happen very often, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the studio system has this history of like, it used to be that even the actors had to be under contract and they were basically like, I don't know. It's not. I would not want to remotely liken it to slavery, but like maybe more like sharecroppers or something, where they're
Yeah. Like
almost
they get royalties off of it.
where they were like owned by the theater. They weren't allowed to
Yeah.
independently decide,
Yeah.
I want to do this project with this company, this project with this company.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the theater basically owned them and said, no, you only do the projects that our company says. And we basically determine what you work on, what you're going
Yeah.
to get paid. Your pay doesn't change based on your popularity because we have you under contract for, like, they would have contracts or decades. So people couldn't
Mm-hmm.
get out of it. It was really
Mm-hmm.
awful. The actors have finally gotten out of that, but I think a lot of the directors and writers remain in a similar situation where they don't have any ownership. Like, they basically have to just say, yeah, you get my thing. You get to pay me what you want for this project I'm doing. And it doesn't matter if it makes $1 billion, I get this amount of money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's
It's
trying to
very
leave this.
static.
Yeah, it's really awful. It's very capitalist. It's very much about protecting corporate interests. And so Ryan Coogler, though, said, after I was like, wow, that's an amazing deal. I can't believe he got that, because all the studio executives are like framing the story in this way that it never happens. And he was like, it happens all the time. They
Yeah.
just don't want you to know that it happens.
Yeah.
So he was trying to say, and they were making it a big deal because he was a Black man. And I guess
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't happen as much for Black writers, Black directors, but he's like, this happens a lot. So my impression is that it's been happening. They don't want people to
Yeah.
know. And they especially don't want the people that they know that they think they can control to know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I
Yeah.
just think it's important to talk about that, and that it paid off for him. I mean, this is a movie that's making a lot of money, has gotten almost universally glowing reviews. It's a movie
Yeah.
that will be around for a long time. And I have a
For
feeling,
sure.
right? And that reverting that control back to him is huge. So good on him.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, good on him for sure. And I mean, I feel like the movie obviously is personal for him as a Black man, as a Black writer and creative and director. And I feel like it also feels very personal to just most Black people in this country specifically. I mean, Black people, I think, everywhere, but specifically here in the US, because it takes place here in the US and it's about the history of Black people here in the US. And I just love the role that it's not my favorite Ryan Coogler movie,
Black
but I
Panther, or
love
what do you like?
Black Panther is my
Yeah.
favorite,
But I
like
think,
by far.
tell me if I'm wrong, like that was a property that existed. I think he
Yeah.
probably took it from there.
Yeah.
But since I
Yeah.
think this one was more deeply personal because I believe
Yeah,
it was his.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was his. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Black Panther
But
is like
obviously the man has a
Marvel's
pattern of
intellectual
doing,
property. Yeah,
a
really
pattern
great
of
movies. Yeah, yeah. This movie felt like the persistence of Black joy, despite everything else, and how that Black joy looks different for everybody. Like, it doesn't look one way for an entire group of people. And a lot of that joy is found through creativity and through music. I will also say, just going back to the horror thing, like, I've always been a fan of vampire movies.
I didn't know it was vampire-y until I started reading some of the things, and I still don't know much because I haven't read anything really in depth. But the vampire-y thing comes up very early in anything about it, so hopefully that's not a big giveaway. Because I didn't realize, and I'm not a vampire-y person, but I'm still curious. I do think it's interesting to see that it's made that much money. I mean, huge amounts of money compared to almost any other original concept movie out there, right? And it is very Black centric. It is not only Black centric in that the cast is Black, or that the director and, it's like, it is about the Black experience, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people in different industries try to talk about those things don't sell, this is why we do, so much is this sort of Black on the periphery. It's
Mm-hmm.
like these moments, like, and it's the same thing for Black Panther and the
Yeah.
fucking numbers
Yeah.
that made. That is a lie that they
Yeah.
tell us, right? It is a lie to say that movies about, and I think it's important to say about the Black experience, yes, but also movies about old people. Like,
Yeah.
we don't see those, but then those movies that have, what's her name, Jane Fonda and whatever, like the book club
Yeah.
and all those have made a ton of money. I mean, movies about queer characters, they make money. It is not that they
Yeah.
won't make money. It's that the theaters are trying to, the studios are very much a system. Hollywood is a
Yeah.
system in the same way of all our
Yeah.
other systems. So I just think it's interesting and important to notice that, like, this movie is not made about white people. And there's no way it got to 350 million globally if there weren't white people going to see it, right? White
Right.
people will
Right.
see movies about
Yeah.
the Black
Yeah.
experience and enjoy them.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
can happen. And it doesn't just have to be about Black pain.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's what makes this movie really unique, that there's Black pain, but there's also Black joy. And there were a lot of white people. There were a lot of Black people in the theater when we went to see it, Mello and I, but there were also a lot of white people. And there were a few scenes where I was just like, it sucks to be a white person in this theater right now, because I can imagine
Maybe
how
that's good
awkward
for
this
them,
is for
right?
them. Huh?
Is that maybe it's good for them?
It is. It is. Not saying it's not, but I was just like, I would not want to be them right now, because this is, if I were white right now and I was sitting here watching this in a room full of Black people, I would feel hella awkward. But
well, now you have me intrigued. I guess I got to see
yeah,
this movie, even though
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
scared.
There's also God, I don't want to give too much
Don't give a
away.
lot away.
I'm trying to think how to say this without doing any spoilers. I don't think this is a spoiler, but like, some of the vampires are white, but not from the South. And so there's also just kind of like this.
Taina, that speaks so much to me, to the mythology that white folks have about the Civil War and North and South, and the beliefs that I think many people hold about white saviorism. And I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so I'm not exactly sure, but my guess is that's probably what that's meant to bring up for people. And I hope it gets people questioning and thinking a bit, right? Because, I mean, this is so funny, so kind of related, but because I think about the mythology of Abraham Lincoln and the ways that we have treated him as this almost like
savior,
saint and savior and hero. And while the actions that resulted slowly in the end of slavery were important, and his role in that shouldn't be denied, to pretend that this was altruism and his true beliefs and, he was just doing this as some big savior, it's just not true, right? Like, it is about the winds of change. It was about, it's the same way people show up now deciding, am I going to support trans folks or not based on polling, right? Like, it's really ultimately a lot of what that was about. And so to pretend that, he was this like savior is not true. And it makes me think too, my son just recently said to me something about George Washington having teeth that weren't real. And he said, did you know they made them out of bones? And I said, I did. And he said, animal bones. And I said, oh, baby, we have to have a conversation. Because I was like, where are you learning this, my love? And I said, well, buddy, I'm glad you talked to me. I'm glad you told me that, because now we have a chance to have a real conversation. I said it is true that he made teeth, that a lot of, not just Washington, but a lot of people at that time were making teeth because their teeth would fall out. They didn't have dental care then very much. And I said, but those bones were not animal bones. They were human bones. They were made from slaves. They were made, not slaves' bones, but slaves' teeth. I mean, they used slaves' teeth. And he was like, wow, I did. And so I'm asking him where he learned that, and he couldn't remember. So I don't know if it was online or at school, but I'm like, if you're learning at the school, I need to call your principal and have a conversation, because this is where truth matters, right? Because when we start to lionize these people as something other than real humans, like, and I know why we do it. And you see the myth making happening in real time now too, where it's like, can we acknowledge the parts of someone? This like makes me think of Michael Jackson or any of the people we've talked before about problematic people. Can we acknowledge the parts of someone that were beneficial to society, that were positive, that were good, that we like, while also recognizing the parts that were flawed? Because all of us are humans. Like, I mean, Mother Teresa, the Pope, anyone, we're all humans. And we all make mistakes. We all do things wrong. We all often act in accordance to the times that we are living, that upon reflection may not have been the way we would want to show up if we were alive 100 years later or whatever. And it just makes me sad that like we feel this need to do that. And I love things that help to give people, the average person sitting in that theater, maybe take a moment to like if it causes them to think a little bit.
Yeah.
If people, like, it might be a leap to think that every person in that theater could make the leap to understanding that those white vampires from the North represent something. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. They weren't from the North. They weren't from the North.
I thought you said some of, oh, okay, well, then.
They just
never
weren't
mind.
from the South. They just weren't
Oh,
from the South.
okay, well,
Yeah.
now I feel like you can't give much away, right?
I can't give anything more than that
Okay.
away. Because I feel like it's a plot point that is just, it's a really deep, there's not, they don't go into it too much in the movie, but it's a really deep plot point that you can just talk about for hours. So I
Well, let's just
don't,
say if they were from the North, it would have been better
yeah,
suited to everything I
yeah,
just said, but
yeah.
still.
But along the lines of what you said, I think it's still where they are from and the context of that, like it still fits with what you were saying
Okay,
about
good.
how like, yes, there are, people are complicated, people are incredibly nuanced, right? And so the way that our culture, especially here in the US, we have to like put a singular hero on a pedestal, right? Without really contextualizing their entire experience, their entire life. Like there's this need for creating this mythology around history, around people. Like it makes me think of things like manifest destiny, right? Like things like the hero's journey, you know, all of this that
The
it's just
American
like
dream,
the
even.
American dream, yeah, which is just, I was about to say utter bollocks because I've been reading too much fan fiction, but it's
I'm
just
watching
bullshit.
British stuff all the time, so we could totally start dipping into that. That's great.
But yeah, it's just, it's bullshit. It's bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not that it's not important, but it doesn't give the whole story. It doesn't tell the whole story. And when you don't have all the pieces of information that you need, like how can you complete the puzzle if you don't have all the pieces together?
Well, it
So
lacks
yeah,
nuance and critical thinking, and then we wonder why our kids grow into adults who lack the ability to see nuance,
yeah,
to have critical
yeah,
thinking.
yeah,
This, I kind of wouldn't mind shifting here just a little bit because it makes me think of something that's happening in real time. When this comes out, it'll be this coming weekend, which is Trump's big parade that he's throwing for himself, his birthday military parade. I don't know how much you know
oh
about
my
the news that's happening.
God.
It's
I don't
coming
know
on.
anything about it.
Yeah, it's best that you don't. But it's coming up on June Saturday that he is throwing this military parade, like you see in China, in Russia, in every dictatorship. You see these massive military parades that he's doing in Washington D.C. You're nearby, maybe you can go protest. But also, just so people know, on that same day, there's still time to look for in your region and sign up for the No Kings rallies. People are having a No Kings rally at the same time that this person is trying to make himself into this king figure, this idolized figure who has this military parade for his birthday. And those are going to be going on everywhere. There's one here in St. Louis that I'm planning to attend with my son and my husband as a way to say, first of all, I will give that parade 0 ounces of my attention because
Yeah,
I reject it wholly. And two, I want to show up and use my voice to say this is still barely hanging by a thread, but still a country that does not have kings or
yeah,
dictators. This is meant to be a democracy, and democracy does not look like that. So I just
yeah,
want to throw that out for people because it's that happening in real time. This is Trump trying to do what we as a collective whole have done to the likes of
yeah,
Washington and Lincoln. He's trying to do it in real time for himself, to turn
yeah,
himself into this beloved person, this beloved king that everyone wants to see this amazing parade for down, the street that was formerly called Black Lives Matter. I don't know if it's on the same street, but it probably is because it's right
it
there in front of
probably
it.
is. Yeah, it
Yeah.
probably
So,
is.
yeah,
That's, you know what that makes me think of?
I can't wait.
That parable of the king who wasn't wearing any clothes.
Yes, the emperor has no clothes. Yes. Trump is
Yeah,
very
it's
much
like
like that.
you're just like parading down the street. Fuck, my God.
I'm hoping no one shows up. It is much like his first inauguration where he said there were millions of people. And in fact, there were like thousands. Of course, some of that I think was weather related, but still, like, I'm hopeful that the distaste for what's happening is strong enough that if there are people, it's protests other than the core group of people
Yeah,
that will be there no matter what. But
yeah,
just the very fact that it's happening and that there's not an uproar, which, speaking of, another thing, I don't want to get too political, but it's just coming to my head. is I don't know, this last week as we're recording this, it made almost no news. So you probably didn't hear about it because I barely did. Jimmy Kimmel did I'll try to find it and link it in the show notes. Jimmy Kimmel did a little rant. You can see it on Instagram Reels talking about this. But Trump in the middle of the night, probably while he was sitting there having a shit on his gold toilet, was posting to his Truth Social bullshit place and said that Joe Biden since 2020 has not been a real person. Joe Biden died in 2020.
God.
For real, he posted, this is the sitting US president posting that the last president died in 2020. And since then, the person that we saw existing as president was clones and robots. Now, I'm not sure if he understands clones and robots are two different things. I don't think he does because I don't think he understands much. So it's clones and robots that we have seen since then, while simultaneously being all excited about Jake Tapper's book and everyone on the right talking about how that person that apparently was a clone and a robot had no brain left because he was, deep into dementia. That's what they've been talking about since, because Jake Tapper's book, if you haven't seen anything about it, which you're so lucky if you haven't, and I need to watch less news, but was all about this, how his cabinet had been hiding the fact that he had been having a lot of dementia in the last couple of years of his presidency. So while the right clings onto that to say, look at that, he's also saying, oh, but that person with that dementia wasn't actually Joe Biden. It was a clone and a robot. So
it was a clone and a robot with dementia?
Apparently. This is who's leading us and who's trying to lionize himself. And yes, that is exactly why he is an emperor with no clothes, because he cannot see how ridiculous he looks, while the rest of us look at it and say, are you fucking serious? Can you imagine if Joe Biden had said that? If Obama had said that about another president?
Oh my God. Oh my God. He would be fucking impeached.
And it doesn't even make the news, Taina. Like nobody's covering it. And if they had, most of the headlines were something like he makes a, outlandish or he fuels, what was it? It was something like he fuels controversy or he fuels a conspiracy theory. And it's like,
he's out of his fucking mind.
Right. That's not a conspiracy theory to say that the president for the last 4 years was a clone and robot or a cloned robot. I don't know again. No, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just fucking insane. The man has lost his mind. He's 78, almost 79. He's like an 80-year-old man. If you're 80-year-old dad, if my father-in-law was saying those things, and sometimes it's not far off, I go, he's lost it. He's in dementia. Like he's like, we're getting here to the end,
Yeah. It's like, oh, we need to make a doctor's appointment and look at end of life care.
It's one of those where you start to pat their arm and say, it's okay. I'm here for you. We're going to figure this out, right? Like, do not go to make decisions about how we weaponize nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Let's give them the nuclear war codes.
No. So anyway, just sharing a few things. So please look up the No Kings rallies in your area. If there is one on June 14th, try to make an effort to be there, because I think the more of us that show up in the same way that there were those amazing rallies last month, it was the beginning of May, I believe, which I went to. And it was really like, again, even if it's just to make you remember that you're not alone in thinking what's going on is crazy and not okay, that's worth it. But also, hopefully, maybe some mainstream news will actually cover it as an alternative to what's happening that day.
To what's actually, that's my hope, that like the news covers the No Kings rallies and not the actual birthday celebration of a homicidal maniac.
They probably won't. Yeah. One other news item? Well, only because
Becky Mollenkamp.
I just watched this, and I don't know if people saw it, but Greta Thunberg is on her way on a
she's on the Gazan fleet, for the food.
Vessel, headed out to Gaza to try to deliver humanitarian aid. It's the second time that humanitarian aid. It's the second time they've done this. The first time they were shot at and had to leave. They're hoping, they're trying to make news so that maybe there will be some pressure to allow them in. And I just look at that young woman, and I know there are people who have mixed feelings about the way she shows up in the world and whatnot. Like, okay, again, can we look at the both and of a person? But I look at her and I think, she is young. Is she 19, 20? I don't even know if she's 20 yet. She's so young. She's a young woman who has spent the bulk of her life, even before, since she was 12, in a spotlight, a global spotlight, right? She said, I have this platform for whatever reason. And she was really humble in the way she was talking about this with, I think it was PBS, because I'm sure no one else is covering it, right? None of the mainstream media. But in her saying, I have this platform for some reason, she was not saying I'm the greatest like Trump. She's just like, for whatever reason, here I am. I have a platform, and it's my responsibility to use that platform and to find ways to try to create difference with that platform. And I just wish if we could see more folks like that who
Yeah.
would show up and take a stand instead of remaining silent about what's happening in Palestine and to Palestinians, because it is as bad as it's ever been. And
Yeah.
tomorrow it will be even worse because
Yeah.
on the daily, it keeps getting worse and worse. It is horrific. It is hard to
Yeah.
look at. It's hard to pay attention to. And yet people with platforms, and honestly, anyone, I don't have Greta Thunberg's platform, but I have a tiny little platform. I think we all need to use that platform to make that statement. And
Yeah.
I wish we could see more folks of like I don't know why he's coming to mind, Tom Cruise, probably because I just watched a Mission Impossible because I was bored. You know, those kinds of folks, like these
Yeah.
top folks who have giant platforms, if we could see them doing similar things, I think there could be a change that happens here. But people are terrified because of the
Yeah.
anti-Semitic attacks that have been happening in the US, which we condemn, which are wrong, which are awful,
Yeah.
but it doesn't
Yeah.
change what's happening there. And I wish that more
Yeah.
people were willing to stand up and say something.
Yeah. Yeah. Anti-Palestinian genocide is not being anti-Semitic. And
Yes. While Israel has done a great job and the Zionists have done a great job of making people believe that,
it's different.
true.
It's different.
Yes.
It's not the same thing. And there are a lot of Jewish people,
Yes.
rabbinic Jewish people, non-religious Jewish people who have been saying that since the beginning.
Religious Jewish people too. Like, I mean, there are people
Yeah.
who for them, their Judaism is both an ethnicity and a religion, right? Like it is both of those that are saying, I cannot support what Israel is doing.
Yeah.
And to separate Israel from Judaism.
Yeah.
We have
It's
to be
two different
capable of-
entities.
Yeah. And too many people seem incapable of making that distinction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I understand why. And this is complicated shit to talk about, but you cannot see what's happening there. And if you haven't looked, I think you have to at least a little to know.
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to speak out, then I think you should have to see what's happening.
Yeah.
Say,
Yeah.
I
And just
see this
because
and not speak out.
And just because something is complicated doesn't mean you don't talk about it. Doesn't mean you don't try to parse it out. And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of. They're like, oh, well, it's complicated and there's so much history, so let's just leave it alone. And it's like, that doesn't help.
Yep.
That doesn't help.
I've been there, so I just want to admit, like, I get that.
Yeah.
Because this is not like, this has just started happening. Like, this is a centuries, maybe even millennia old problem, right? This region of the world, complicated feelings around Jerusalem and who has, like, for whom this land is actually meant. And all of these things have been around a really long time. So this is not a new issue. It is. There has never felt like there's been an answer that seems to work. So, like, I get it because I feel that feeling of like, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Palestinian, I'm not Muslim. I don't, that is not where I live. Like, this doesn't feel like my war in a way. Like, it doesn't feel like my battle to be injecting myself into. And yet I am a human. And so I have to at least say, I have to be able to say, what's happening to these humans is not okay. I don't care for the, all that other stuff is not for me to decide, perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't even think you have to be anti-Zionist necessarily, although I think maybe, I don't know, maybe you do. But
I think you do. As a former Zionist, because I used to be a Zionist, I will say, yes, you have to be anti-Zionist because Zionism is predicated on the belief that Israel is, Israel is an entity that should replace Palestinian life on that land.
Yeah. Okay, good then. Because I mean, I'm anti-Zionist, but I wasn't sure. Like, again, these are such complicated issues. It's like, I'm not even so, okay, you have to be anti-Zionist to be able to say this. But I think ultimately just knowing if you're a human and you can see what's happening to these humans, half of which are children.
Yeah.
Children, or more than half are children. Children don't decide. There are babies. There are young kids that are literally starving to death, freezing to death. They don't make the decisions about what's happening in that region. They don't even know their religion yet, right? They may be told what they are, but they don't understand any of that. They're humans. And if you can look at humans suffering in that way and say, yeah, well, but Israel deserves to exist or whatever it is, I think you got to check your values, man. Like you really got to check in with yourself. And what does that say?
Yeah.
Oof, that got heavy. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah. I had a conversation with my wife last week about being a former Republican, and she was shocked. And I was like, well, what do you expect? I was like, evangelical.
Hold up. I didn't know that about you. I knew you were evangelical Christian too, but I didn't really make the link that you would also be Republican. I thought maybe you were one of those wackadoodle people who are like claim to be a Democrat while being an evangelical Christian.
No, I was I think.
So wait a minute. Have you voted for like a Republican for president?
Oh yeah, I voted for Bush.
That's amazing to me, Taina. I didn't know that. I'm shocked too.
Yeah.
You people, we can change. You can change. If you voted for Trump,
it's completely possible to change.
because I think so many people keep holding on to the support for Trump and this almost like this stubborn, well, I voted that way. So now I got to like somehow find a way to like convince myself.
Make it work. Yeah. Yeah.
But you can change.
You can
look how
change.
far you've come from.
Yeah. The first time I deviated from voting Republican, I think was when Obama ran.
And was that, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't make this leap, so tell me if I'm way off here, but did that have to do more with his being Black or because you had made a leap in your beliefs by then?
I believed in his policies more. I think that was the first time I considered not being a single issue voter. Because here's the thing you have to remember. Was
your single issue abortion before that?
Abortion, yes. That's the only issue that matters for evangelical Christians or Christian nationalists. It's abortion. It's always abortion. It's always abortion.
Yeah.
And it's more than that. But if you ask them, like, that's...
Except now, I think now it's abortion and trans issues.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the right has so successfully
made
that.
Because it's family, right? It's marriage and family. And so abortion and trans issues threatens the institution of what a family or a marriage is supposed to look like. The traditional, according to biblical beliefs, right? But Obama was just such a charismatic speaker and and not just charismatic, but he's just an excellent communicator.
Yeah. His messaging was amazing. That's where they excelled.
Amazing. Yeah. So much better than the Republican candidate.
Mumbling Bush.
Yeah. And I remember being intrigued by having heard some of his stuff. And then one of my friends who was also in the church with me was like, what do you think about Obama? And I was like, oh, we can talk about this. Okay. And I was like, I kind of like him.
That was something you were able to finally look past because of his charisma?
I think at that point, I had reached a tipping point in my belief system because one of my close friends in the church had been sexually assaulted by a pastor in the church. So we're getting really heavy here again.
Yeah, but it's that personal experience that...
Yes. Yeah. So I think at that point whereas I had been so insulated and I would say even brainwashed before that, where I was just go along with whatever. I think at this point I was like, wait, where does personal agency fit in here? When do we get to make decisions for ourselves, especially about our bodies? Because someone who I love, her body was just violated.
Right. And if
by
she were
someone that we trusted. Yeah.
Would you force that person to have
that baby? Yeah. We trusted this person. We loved this person like a family member. I mean, I was at this pastor's house like 3 or 4 days a week, babysitting, family dinners, vacations. Like it was earth shattering. And so I think by the time Obama came around, my belief system was starting to pivot.
It takes that personal knowledge so often. Who was it that said you can't hate people that you can look in the eye or something like that? I'm horrible, but there was somebody who said something about that. Like basically you can't hate people when you're talking to them, when you know them, when you see them, when you're looking them in the eye. Hate doesn't happen, right? It doesn't happen on a one-to-one level. Hate happens on this where you can become, when you can make a person
you detach
when you make them from subject into object and into this category of person. So I hate trans people until I meet a trans person and realize they're a human, have a human experience, and they just want to live. They just want to love, right? They just want the same things I do. And when you meet a person, they become a person. They become a subject and not an object. And that's so hard because how do we solve for that when I can't fucking be around these people to be their example of a woman who's had an abortion, to be their example of a woman who is, whatever, successful, independent, whatever, to be an example of what a bisexual woman or pansexual woman can be. I can't, it's hard for me to do that, but yet
but you don't need to, because there are people in those communities that are those things.
Yeah.
Right. I think some people just refuse to let go of their hate.
Well, that's true too, but I also think some people just still live in their bubble. I mean, I honestly think they just don't, I don't know, so many people who are filled with hate, because I don't know if you've ever seen some of those shows that they'll do where they'll take these neo-Nazi people even and have them be in experience one-on-one with the person that they hate, with a Jewish person, with a gay person, whatever it is. the way they soften, the way they start to question things is so different because it is that one-on-one experience.
Yeah.
But there is still, I guess you're right, there are still those people who can say like, well, I hate gays, but not this gay.
But
right?
not this
Like,
person. Yeah, you're the
yeah.
exception. Yeah.
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 So
And
that
then
does
it
happen.
becomes tokenism, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think more power to those of you who are able to do that work. I think it goes back to the Deepa Ira social change map of like, we need people who are able to do all kinds of different pieces of activism. And I do think that is a form of activism, being able to be in a room with people who have hate in their hearts for you and to be able to show them your humanity. That is, I can't do it. I find that
me either.
exceptionally challenging, but I think those who can, you're doing the Lord's work, right? Like, and I truly mean that is not a non-Christian, but everything I understand about Jesus is that's the kind of work he did, right? And then for Christians to paint him in this other way is amazing because he's the one who would sit and have dinner with beggars and whores or whatever, you know, they called, I can't remember the phrases.
He was
used.
fucking Palestinian.
Yeah. No, you better not say that. Not allowed to say that. He was a Jew, remember? A Palestinian Jew?
A Palestinian Jew. There are Palestinian Jews.
It's very possible. Yes.
Like, that's the thing. Like, when you talk about Israel and Palestine and Judaism, like, these exist in different categories.
Yeah. And in different times. I mean, Israel didn't even exist when Jesus was alive.
Israel
only existed
it didn't.
for what, 60 years or something, 50 or where are we at on there? Yeah. It's been 50 years.
If you look at like the old school Bibles that have the maps in the back of them, it's Palestine. So like what? Where's your argument? Like,
and can you not love? Can you not believe in Palestine's right to exist and in Palestinians existing as humans and honoring that, and also deeply love our Jewish friends and believe that they have a right to exist? Exactly. Like, I just am always blown away that people can't hold both of those feelings. And again, I do feel like I have to honor the fact that I am not Jewish. I am not Palestinian. I am not Muslim. There's no part of that is my story. And so I do want to be clear that I understand that. So it's easy for me on the outside to say those things. And yet on the outside, it does feel so simple. And yet it's obviously so complicated. So,
yeah. Well, because Israel is a religious ethno state. And the reason why it's so hard,
like
especially
the ultimate,
here in the, yes.
I don't think there's anything else like it.
It's not a,
other than maybe the Vatican,
geography.
The Vatican
City,
religion. But beyond that, I don't think there's anything else that comes even close to Israel as an ethno.
Christian nationalism is the thing that comes close to it.
Yeah, but that doesn't
Christian nationalism.
But it doesn't have what they have there, which is an entire country that is literally, that was formed, created, preserved, continues to be solely for the purpose of the preservation Zionism. Of a religion. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so hard for some people here in the US to deconstruct the idea of something like Israel, because Christian nationalism is so rampant here. While it doesn't exist on the same plane, that doesn't mean that Christian nationalists don't want it to exist on the same plane as it does here.
I mean, Trump now wants to create his own golden dome, like they have the Iron Dome over Israel. And he's very much not only a Zionist, not only very pro-Israel, like he looks at what's happening there and says, why aren't we doing that here?
Yeah.
Why can't we do that same thing here for Christians and creating this, making America go from what it was truly built on into this idea of a true Christian nationalist state?
He's not even a fucking Christian.
He's disgusting, right? I know.
If anyone's a fucking clone robot, it's him.
Well, he certainly doesn't exemplify any Christian values I've ever heard of. And it is hilarious to me. And the dissonance that it takes for these true evangelical kind of Christians to continue to support him, knowing that he flagrantly his entire life has shown up in a way that disregards everything they hold dear. There's nothing about him that is family oriented. No. And for them to say like, we know all that and it's okay. Like it's baffling how we anyway.
Yeah, I don't even identify as a Christian anymore, but as a former Christian, I'm like, the fuck not.
Yeah. I mean, at least you can look at your time as a Republican, while I'm sure you look at that now and be like, oh boy, but those folks were more of what we typically think of as that family party. Like they were more representative of those values. Mitt Romney, as an example, is definitely somebody who is that, like, even though he's not Christian in the way you were
Yeah.
Christian, but
Yeah.
he's deep into his Mormonism and his faith, and
Yeah.
he is certainly very much about family. I don't agree with him in any way, but I can see where someone like you would have supported that, and at least it made sense. It was in alignment with the values you thought you had or you did have at the time. You look at this now, and it's just like the dissonance is amazing, because it's like how it
It's
doesn't
so far.
add up
It's
at
in a
all.
completely different universe.
It's
Completely different universe.
like me now saying like, and I see this starting to happen a bit on the left, where the left is moving so far towards the center because they're saying like, well, at least George Bush or those types, right? The Romney types are
Aren't as
more
bad.
aligned with where I'm at than this guy. But that to me is the same dissonance. It's like, how do you
Yeah.
suddenly start moving that direction, thinking that's
Yeah.
the answer?
Yeah.
Moving farther from your values as the answer?
Yeah.
That's no
Yeah.
better than those folks who are moving farther from their real
Yeah.
values as the
Yeah.
answer.
No. We need to keep our distance as far away as possible and not move closer.
Yeah. I just posted today on Blue Sky that like making decisions based on polling, based on popularity, based on focus groups is cowardice, right? Rather than basing it on values, what is right, right? It may not be popular to say that, trans folks deserve to play sports and use bathrooms based on the gender that they identify with. That may not be popular, but it's right. It's the aligns with the value set that we have around humanity. And I want to see leaders who are willing to make decisions based on that, to show that bravery, to say, this may not be the thing that's going to win the popularity contest, but it's what's right. It's what's right for humanity. I'm ready to go beyond where we're at now, because if the same thing with slavery, if you were looking at a time in history, the polls would have said, well, then I better support slavery. Right?
Yep.
You don't do it because it's wrong. And I am like, we're beyond AOC. And I mean, there are a handful of them. There are supposed to be Maxwell Frost. I mean, there are some really amazing, especially younger people. Bernie is not younger, but there are some amazing people. But on the whole, where are they? Where are the left progressive? What, in our country, you can't win unless you're a Democrat. So where are they? The ones that are showing up with that level of bravery?
Yeah.
They're cowards, and it's great.
Yeah, they are. There's not enough of them. And then the ones that are there are, like you said, they're cowards, or.
Well, the ones that are there don't have any power.
Or they don't have any power. Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't follow Maxwell Frost, when he was voted in, he's in Florida, hard place to be. And he was like the youngest. He was the first Gen Z. That's the one after millennial, right? He was the first Gen Z person elected into the House. So he's very young. He shows up. He's out there fighting. He's saying the right things. He believes in the right things. He's voting the right way. But he has no power. He's a junior, very junior representative. The coalition that they have that is that progressive, the AIPAC, which is an organization that supports Israel as a state, Zionist organization, they continue to funnel millions and millions into voting out anyone else that is a part of that pack. Cori Bush, who was my representative,
voted out,
was taken out by this pack and their money. They flooded our city with tons of money, our county with tons of money to get her out. And she was one of those very vocal pro-Palestinian people. There's no way for them to gain power. And so we're stuck, and it's frustrating until more people like demand it of people. So show up at the No Kings rally. That's one way to hopefully at least show some support for change. Okay, we've gone so long.
Yeah.
And I don't even know that this was not what we were going to do.
This was not what we were going to talk about at all, but
it was good.
Here we are. We are where we are.
Maybe I just needed a good rant. We were going to talk about kind of some of my feelings I'm having around productivity and stuff like that. But maybe I just needed to get some of this shit off my chest, and maybe that will help me feel a little better, because I've been feeling kind of down. And I do think a lot of this stuff that's churning in me is part of it.
On you.
Yeah. So maybe getting it out will help. So thank you for listening.
Yeah. Yeah. We're still going to have that talk, by the way.
Okay, well, we'll see. No, I'm kidding. That's fine. We can. And soon we're going to have an interview. We're just spacing them out because we've already recorded them. So we had Stella Gold on the last episode. And I don't know when we'll release it. Next week after. Like, we're trying to put a little space between guests. But we also have Krishna. Yeah. Your last name, do you? I asked them that?
I always mispronounce it, so I don't want to.
I should ask.
Mispronounce it. But our friend Krishna.
And that was a great conversation, too. That'll be coming up soon.
Yes, it will.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thanks, Taina. Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Will you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen?
I know people say that all the time, and if you're like me, often you just go on to the next podcast, but truly, taking that moment to do that will really help us reach a wider audience.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.